Hi, and welcome to Boom, It's on the Blockchain. I'm here today with Garrett, who has been traveling around the world. How are you, Garrett?
Good. Yeah, I was down in Belize, learning and educating, um, some of their people and government, regarding how they could be more similar to El Salvador, how they could, do some things that are uh, maybe similar, but not exactly the same. So.
Okay, so you've combed your hair today for the podcast, Garrett. So you obviously learned something down Belize. But let's go back to the start. Tell us about traveling to Belize first of all, and where is it, and how do you actually get there, Garrett? Because it's not the easiest place to get to, is it?
Well, it depends on where you come from. It's pretty easy in the U.S. actually. Most airports do have a direct flight. I had some trouble though because I wasn't in the U.S. I was in Mexico because I'm like, oh, I want to go down and see Mexico. I thought I could just meander over because it's right next to Mexico. It's by Cancun, south of Cancun, and I thought, okay, it's going to be no problem to fly in there from Mexico, but there was not very many direct flights. So I had to fly down to Guatemala and then I had to fly over to Belize. It was really just, it was a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, let's say. So when you went there, what were you actually going for, Garrett? What was the first thing? Why did you turn up to Belize in the first place?
Yeah, it was basically a Chamber of Commerce meeting. So there was the Belize American Chamber of Commerce, has an annual trade mission, and they go down there and bring people from the U.S. who have or want to learn more about business opportunities in Belize, and I would hint to one of the greatest opportunities there being the real estate, because it's very, very similar climate and I would say much more beautiful beaches than Florida, but for a fraction of the cost. And it's also very untouched. A lot of it is undeveloped. There's miles and miles of coastline that have been undeveloped. And I would say that that's one of the greatest strengths there, and not the not just the coast is great. I mean, there is wonderful stuff inland too, which I got the opportunity to see.
There's the map just now for everyone that looking there. So there's the United States at the top. There's Mexico over there, and there's Belize with a big arrow pointing down to where it is. So, it's right down there in Central America, everybody. But as Garrett says, it's is that the Caribbean? It's going out
Yes.
to?
Yep.
So it's out to the Caribbean, everybody. So that's for everyone to know a little bit about exactly where Belize is. So what's the population of Belize then, Garrett?
It is about 430,000 people.
430,000. So it's not even that big, really. It's like Chula Vista, where I stay in San Diego, is like nearly 300,000. So
yeah. Yep. So that's spread across the whole country, and if you look at the population of El Salvador, it's I think in the millions. They have a couple million people that live there, and they have about 6.5 million people that live in El Salvador. So it's a little bit different, because there was many people there trying to, they're trying to get 6.5 million people to start using Bitcoin as a currency, and I just don't think that was. I don't think that was something that's going to be easy to do, especially since most of those people are, it's lower income communities. It's a little bit different. So, but with Belize, there's an interesting opportunity in the fact that Western Union dominates the money transfer business. So that's their only option to move money around, and you're talking about people in a country where the minimum wage is $1.65 an hour. And you're expecting people, if they're sending $200 to pay $20, well, that's 30 hours of work right there. Whereas if they, there might be an opportunity for them to do something. I think Bitcoin's off the table, but I think that there are other things, such as stable coins, that might be beneficial. One of the discussions and education pieces of my travels there was that they just talking about doing a central bank digital currency.
So you spoke to the central bank down there about digital currency. Tell us a bit about the conversation.
Yeah, it was really wonderful, and just delving into some of the stuff that they already know about. The fact that some of them were already primed on the topic, that it's gotten into their minds a little bit as a potential solution, a potential way that they could solve some of the problems. But it is one thing that was kind of reiterated, was the fact that it is difficult to get away from Western Union, because that's what a lot of people are comfortable with. But in the rest of the world, in the developed world, it is going away.
Yeah, and I know for people using cash, Western Union's the one. But obviously the commission rates of Western Union are so high. So where if you think of, and that's why a sort of stable coin, initially we were talking about oil coin was the original concept that Dan had written the white paper for back in like 2017, 18, was essentially having one underlying coin for the industry that essentially saves money on international transaction fees and saves money in banking fees. Garrett's talking about Belize here, whereby this is where a digital currency, where it would be a stable coin, would it be benchmarked against the dollar to begin with, rather than just float about itself? How, something like Tether?
It would have to be a stable coin, because I just don't see a way where it's beneficial. Like the El Salvador model was firing from the hip. I just don't think it was being the best advocate of the people, because there were many people that were accepting Bitcoin, and then it just loses 75% of its value, and they're left.
Because I think Bitcoin's like investing in gold for people out there. It's a commodity rather than using.
I think it's way riskier than gold. Yeah, so it's
until we go into the Federal Reserve and we find there's no gold there apart from big IOU unit, and then think, wait a minute. If there's no gold there and we've based all our currency on this, is the government just made the whole thing up and keeps printing currency to drive inflation up?
That's actually the argument of a lot of people that say they think gold is worth a lot more than the chart says, because if that's true,
it's a big shiny rock that we don't use for anything else,
If that was if that was true, basically we would have a little bit different situation, because the supply of gold would be a lot less than people think. In Belize, one of the interesting things is they could approach, they could do a central bank digital currency and then approach it from the aspect of backing it with their land. They have a lot of really great land. Like I was saying earlier, you have
that's the American project we were working on with Kokesh and McAfee.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah, because it's interesting because they have the ability to make liquid some of this currency with their land. There's a lot of land and it hasn't been developed. It's arguably, I would say, some of the best beachfront property that you're going to find in North America. It's like Florida was probably 50 years ago. And
I think it would be better if let's bring back up the map again, because let's remember that Florida was basically on a swamp. That's why the alligators live there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yes. This is like proper beachfront property, people. This is like the real
and there's
deal.
Mountains too. I didn't know this, but this time I got the chance to drive further into Belize, and there's actually mountains. It's not like Florida. Florida's flat, and it is
swampy,
swampy. Whereas Belize is, the coastline is flat. There's islands, but there's
Cancun style,
also,
basically. It's just basically like Cancun just there, isn't it? Cancun's just
yeah,
above it.
that's correct. It's still at that tropical level. Cancun is nearby, and it's there's some real opportunity in investing in this real estate, or them being able to do something with the real estate, in the backing of a digital currency, or potentially, one thing to factor in is that if they were to bring investment into the country, if they were to bring investment into the country, and let's say they declared maybe a small list of stable coins legal tender, such as USDC, maybe USDT is an option, I'm not sure, but USDC seems like a safe bet, and or DAI, just picking a couple
Or
stable
create their own
coins.
one, basically.
Yeah, I think that
Their central bank could sort of run it, because
yeah.
what's the difference between their central bank creating their own digital currency and benchmark it against the dollar than using their own currency now, which is essentially pegged against the dollar? What's the
Well,
difference there?
yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I would say that the reasoning is, here's my reasoning, and I had to think about this a little bit, but if you're starting a stable coin, and you need the liquidity, the biggest part is having something that's global, and you have a bunch of other players making it liquid and market making for it, and it allows your people to use a currency that goes all these different places and is accepted. And I think if they're already using the dollar, it makes sense to, they're talking about doing a CBDC themselves, and they're being fed kind of this narrative, which makes sense from, FIS, which is a big vendor for a CBDC, software. But the problem is that it goes against, making something really truly accessible internationally. And I think it would make more sense if they, the goal of any country, small country, company, anything, is to make money and have your money be liquid and tradable. And I think if they followed the model El Salvador had, where it's like, hey, El Salvador said, hey, let's do Bitcoin as legal tender. We want to bring Bitcoin into El Salvador. If instead they took the approach, well, that's just too risky to just say, okay, Bitcoin's legal tender. If they did something like and said stable coins, or just maybe a list, or partnered with a single stable coin, I think that has legs, because if you go on Coin Market Cap, I think USD Tether is like $60 billion. USD Coin is I think up there as well, 60 billion. And by just simply saying like, oh, okay, we take that now, that's huge. And it's I'm not sure what the market capitalization is for Western Union.
But
But
Western Union's a money transfer. It's just a case of we're transferring your cash from one area to the other.
yeah,
The only difference is that we are taking our percentage. Whereby
yep,
if you use something like this, suddenly you're knocking out the percentages with it,
yeah,
and it's a
you're
lot. And
knocking out the
it's in control.
percentages.
You take
Yeah.
control of it.
Yeah,
And it's that
Western
educational
Union,
piece.
it's interesting as a company, obviously they're just playing a middleman. It's a $5.5 billion market cap. So we're already looking at something that, in all honesty, it's nowhere as big. You could almost argue that it's dying a little bit. But with USDC, I know for a fact the country of Bermuda has partnered with them to domicile some elements of their backing out of the island nation of Bermuda. And it's interesting for these Caribbean community nations to just start thinking about it, to start thinking about, well, these are the already adopted standards. And potentially, instead of creating our own, what we could do is, we could hold treasury in some of the already existing standards. And it's a really good thing for these countries, because they're bringing in capital, and it's capital that's going to be liquid. They're going to be able to say, hey, we're selling this land, and then we're taking the digital dollars for it. And it's extremely beneficial. And then if there was some appetite for risk, maybe it would make sense to hold a balance sheet in Bitcoin, but with the proper education. But I think using conventional stable coins, there's some.
It doesn't change for everyday items of goods. That's the problem when
Yeah.
Bitcoin fluctuates too much. It's just a case of, because it's fluctuating up and down so much, what's the difference between using Bitcoin for everyday currency exchanges rather than using some currency that moves all around? You think of Lebanon right now, they've had to close the banks,
Mm-hmm.
So their banks are closed right now. If you've got money in the Lebanese banks, you can't get them out. There's a woman over there, she's a heroine right now because she went in, her sister was essentially, she needed cancer treatment. And she had to go in and basically rob the bank for $13,000, which was her sister's own money, to get the money out. So if you can actually Google that just now. And the funny thing is she held them up with a toy gun. But she had to rob her own bank to get her own money out because essentially the banking system in their country is completely collapsed. So...
Wow.
And we were talking about inflation that's happening there. That's why you don't want to be keeping it in the Lebanese national currency. So, and going forward, there's other places in the world. So, what Garrett's saying right now is, we're essentially, and they're using the US dollar anyway. It's just using a digital version of the US dollar. But for the people that live there, they'll be able to hold it. They'll be able to pay for goods for it. They'll be able to transfer the money. And if you're making $1.65 an hour, and every single time you go to actually transfer any money with Western Union, those guys are taking 10% of it. It's a big chunk of your wages that are just essentially going straight into Western Union's pocket. Now, because we just think of it in money, oh, well, it's not that money. It's only $200. What's that into this? But if you're thinking $20, $165 a day, as Garrett said, it's like suddenly that's half your week's work just in their fee.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. In the US, people get it. They have choice. They have choice to go do a plethora of other things and take and exchange money in many different ways. Even if you step over to, let's say Mexico or Brazil or any of those other larger countries in Latin America, people have the opportunity to choose, whereas in Belize, Western Union sees this, they see, oh, we have an opportunity to come in and monopolize and essentially impose just these usury rates onto people that can't afford it. And it's time for, I would say, a competitive solution to come in. And I think education combined with that competitive solution can allow people to flourish and be able to transmit money without having to pay a tenth of or more of what it's worth.
Yeah, and when I live in San Diego, there's a lot of Western Unions here because a lot of people still transfer their money back to Mexico. They're using Western Union. Plus, there's a lot of immigration here as well, so there's still a big cash economy. So people are there. They basically take your money. They can, do that early day cashing of your checks. Again, they take big percentages. So what's going to happen, and the beauty of essentially digitizing the dollar, digitizing currencies, is these people who are essentially squeezing the people who are at the lower end of society in terms of their understanding of finance. Essentially, they're getting paid. And then these are the people that are paying the highest finance charges.
Yeah.
The guys who are the wealthiest know how to play the system. So they avoid the high finance charges. It's the people who are living week to week, day to day. They're getting the cash in. They're getting paid in cash. Sometimes they're getting paid a check, but then they're having to cash that check and they can't cash it in a bank. So they have to go to one of these, we'll cash your checks. But to cash the check, we're going to charge you 8%. It's like, I'm going to charge you 9%. And then you pay your 8% to cash the check. And then you go next door to the Western Union and they take another 8-9%. So suddenly it's like you're losing 15, 16, 17, sometimes even 18% of your money just to access the money that you've earned, which is crazy.
It's indeed very, very crazy, and it's something we could hope that
Technology
there's
will help with.
technology can come in there and be the harbinger of change. That's what we could hope for. It's all we can hope for, really.
So,
Um,
so we've got a guest in the background there. Will we try and bring him in? I know he's not got his picture up, but let's just see if we can bring
sure.
Michael in. Here we go. Hello,
Hi,
Michael.
gentlemen.
Hey.
How are you? I apologize. I'm actually on a flight and we just landed, so my apologies. But you guys, I've been listening, and you guys are doing an exceptional job. You don't
Hey,
even
thank
need
you.
me.
Yeah, just so everybody knows, this is Michael Young. He is the head of the Belize American Chamber of Commerce, and he was the one that brought me down and got me a lot of these awesome engagements. And we look forward to doing it again in the future. But yeah, we're just out here raising awareness and making sure people understand the opportunity that's there. Hey, there
Yeah,
he is.
yeah. So I'm on the flight. We're actually just landed in Belize, and we're headed. We're getting off the flight now. So Mr. Alistair is very nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And
no problem at all, Michael.
we and I'm whispering because I don't want to bother these nice people, all these beautiful souls on the flight. But it's actually an honor and pleasure to have had Mr. Willie Pete join us on our annual trade mission to Belize. So
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, it's good, and we're glad to have you just pop in, Michael, so people know, anybody out there that's looking to do business or get involved buying land, or maybe some other, there are big names that sometimes listen to these podcasts on LinkedIn, Twitter, and whatnot. And the more awareness there is for people, and the more people understand that, hey, there's this opportunity to come work with a young country that has been around only for 41 years, and a country that wants to change and develop and grow. It's huge. So yeah, we want those people to know that they can reach out to Michael, and we want them to know that they can get involved.
yeah, and thank you, Will. And again, Mr. Alistair, it's great to be on your platform. But for example, the governor of the central bank, the one of the highest regulatory bodies, federal regulatory bodies of Belize. He's in his early 40s, right? So young guy, and but he's been with the central bank for over 15 plus years. I know him personally. Went to high school with him in junior college. Brilliant guy, very versed, and he is pro. Belize is a cash-based economy, right? We still operate with a lot of cash, and with a cash-based economy, that leaves a lot of room for money laundering and so forth. So the head of the federal regulators down here are of the opinion they want to transition the country or the economy into more of a digital um, currency type. So at the head, the will is there from the government standpoint. So, we just want to be good participators, good players, stakeholders, and help however we can from a collaborative standpoint, playing well in the sandbox. So when we have someone like Willie Pete joining us, it was great. The central bank said yes. We have a sit down, and then we also had the other regulatory body, which is the Financial Services Commission, the FSC. You guys can Google that. And the securities laws for Belize just became enacted in January of this year. So we're at the cusp, at the beginning. So participation is very, very, very good.
Yeah, it's and that was definitely a good conversation we had with them, regarding because the U.S. tries to kind of, when it comes to securities laws and whatnot, they try to fit a kind of a round peg in a square hole, and they try to say, oh, okay, no, you're going to deal with these laws that are 90 years old. That's what you're dealing with, and we're not going to make new ones. And that's problematic for the entire industry. But it was helpful when we got to kind of ask questions and put it out there. What was the purpose of those laws, and do they apply to these digital currencies? And I appreciated that there was an honest answer put forth, and the answer was no, that these laws really aren't, they don't say anything about digital currencies, and we need to tackle that separately, which I think is that it's a level of honesty that I appreciate a lot. Not to say that doesn't present its own set of issues, but it is nice that they're willing to look at it as its own separate box, as opposed to how the U.S. has kind of, to date. I'm not saying that they won't in the future make a set of rules just for crypto or just for the way things work, but they one of the best examples recently is how I think Ethereum, somebody came out and I think it was the CFTC, said it was a commodity, and they said Bitcoin's a commodity, Ethereum's a commodity, it's settled. Now they're trying to come from another agency. They're trying to come from the SEC, and Gary Gensler, mind you, I took his course as MIT course online when they did it a couple of years ago. And he did in the course say, oh yeah, no, we've already decided it's under the jurisdiction of the CFTC. It's a commodity. But now they're trying to say, okay, well, they change it to proof of stake with the merge, it might be a security. We're going to change it. We're going to regulate it, which is like, first off, it's not, if the Ethereum Foundation, Vitalik's Canadian, so he's Canadian first off. And then next, he is the whole foundation, which is a nonprofit, is based out of Zurich, Switzerland. So it's kind of interesting to just see them flip flop and just not be willing to come out and work to create a set of rules that's conducive to America leading the pack with blockchain.
Yeah, because Ethereum's actually both. That's the thing that people don't understand about a lot of these crypto. How can it be a commodity and it's also a technology?
Yeah.
So everybody's using this Ethereum to essentially run nearly all the NFTs, all the technology, all the blockchain technology. The majority of it's backed on Ethereum, where therefore it's similar to like a technology like the internet.
Yeah.
It's a new iteration internet. But on the flip side, because you can buy and sell this thing and it goes up and down in price, it's also a commodity. And it's both.
Yeah.
And as Garrett says, you can't just suddenly say it's one or the other, because of the 10,000 crypto tokens out there, the most of them are going to be securities. And when they come down to it, because they're not doing anything, it's just a case that this is a value of something. A lot of them are going up and down in price. A lot of these crypto tokens are going to end up getting done as securities and being put down as security tokens rather than cryptocurrencies. And you've got Binance and all these guys not wanting to list security tokens. And then there's this gray area of what's a security token and what's a cryptocurrency. But what you're finding with Ethereum is because it's the leader of the pack, alongside Bitcoin, they're more than one thing. And that's what's confusing to a lot of the regulators.
Yeah. It's well, the problem even with the like just saying that, putting everything in the basket, because America can go ahead and do that. They can go ahead and be like, oh, okay, it's all securities. But all that will do is that's the same as Cuba saying to people, oh, we're communist. You can't sell a newspaper. You can't make a living. You need to ask Fidel, but people sell stuff anyways. They sell stuff all over. They're going to do it anyways. And they're going to import stuff to fix their cars. They're going to sell bananas. They're going to do whatever they need to do to make a living. So it's interesting in Cuba. It's like any type of capitalism is illegal, but everybody just does it anyways. And that's all the U.S. is going to do is, become a financial Cuba if I think China's done a little bit of it by banning crypto outright, But if they just say, oh, okay, everything's a security or whatever, it's no different than any other thing they've done, like making marijuana illegal. Okay, everybody smokes marijuana still for years, and they eventually just had to legalize it. And there's so many other things where it's like, well, it's different when there was like, for up until the advent of the internet, they could play gatekeeper and kind of, they could play gatekeeper to some of these markets and mercantile exchanges. But now it's gotten to the point where you need a whole new set of laws. You need to make new laws that at least, it's upfront with people, and it's saying like, okay, maybe it's a new class of security, or maybe it's a new something like that. And I think that's the way to approach it. And that was the level of kind of understanding that I got in Belize, is like, well, they understand, okay, a security is a security, and then that's, what it is. It's
interesting what Michael's saying about it being like a cash economy. That's
Yeah.
in so many countries. They're cash economies. It's just like, because their banking systems, they're not robust. They can't be trusted. That's the problem. It was like, because we do the website Rebuilding Iraq, and the joke there is, if you went and put $50,000 into the Iraqi bank and went back the next day, the Iraq bank manager's left with your $50,000.
Yeah, right.
And then that's the problem in Belize as well. It's like, you're safer off keeping your money rolled up in a sock hidden in your wall than you are in your local bank, because look what's happening in Lebanon right now. You put your money in the bank, you've gone to get the money at the bank's not there.
Mind you, here's the interesting thing though, is it's actually not like that, because it's not quite to that level, because Belize is a former British colony. They still print the Queen on their money, and they still have lifelines to, Great Britain and the US that back some pretty big credit unions. Holy Redeemer Credit Union, for instance, in Belize is, a $630 million credit union. And, how do they get to that point? Well, it's like, they have figures like Lord Ashcroft spends a lot of time in Belize. There are British folks, British royalty, dukes and lords that go and spend time in Belize, and they set up, financial institutions, to pad their own personal interests. But it's interesting. They print the Queen and all their money. They were they're not like, well, not quite yet like Barbados. Barbados completely cut the cord from the British, but I think Belize is a little bit reliant to some level on the British military defending them against Guatemala. And then the US, we're kind of just there. We help on some level to, keep the country safe from other forces. That's a whole nother topic there. But I did get the chance to visit with some people from the embassy, regarding, hey, what do you guys do here? And it's interesting, our presence, but the British presence is, it's very interesting, very, very interesting. So.
Yeah, look, there's some of the money. There's the Queen right there. Look at that, Garrett.
What
we're going to do? That's so interesting. That I didn't even know the Queen was on that money.
Yep.
So there she is, there back in her heyday. But we're going to do a little section tune the cut about the Queen as well, So we'll bring that in. So that's interesting. But nice to see her back when she was, in her heyday there. I like the money as well. It's always interesting. Look, there's the central. So how much is a Belize $2 worth?
That is $1. That's $1 US. So it's pegged to the US dollar at a fixed peg. The only other country that does a fixed peg to the US dollar is Barbados. That means that you couldn't come and trade BZD against the dollar or anything else. There's no foreign exchange. So it's just fixed peg to the dollar. And that means you can go down and I could take a $20 bill and buy things in Belize, and I get change 2 to 1 in their local currency. And it's interesting. It's a very interesting way to do things, because you have the Queen, the British Queen, on money that's pegged to the US dollar. And meanwhile, the country itself has been independent since 1982 or 1981, I think. And, they've had their independence for quite some time now. But the British definitely still have their tentacles there. It used to be known before it was Belize, it was called British Honduras. And, the British came there, they got the mahogany for their ships and their beautiful, furniture and whatnot. And that was Belize was actually one of the reasons they had all some of the best wood for their ships, their naval fleets, and they were able to keep a solid fleet of ships, thanks to that wood.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the old flag of them as well. The British flag in the corner.
Yep.
British Honduras, So so having a look at the time there. So it was from 1862 to 1981.
Yes. Yep.
So that was when it was British Honduras. So amazing to think that all part of the old Commonwealth, The British Crown Colony, east coast of Central America, south of Mexico.
Yep. And the Queen used to go there, and she'd visit every once in a while. I think the last time was just a couple of years ago, but it's one of the former colonies that is a little bit more hesitant to completely leave behind the British, I think, because if you look up, the land dispute, Guatemala claims that they shouldn't have made Belize its own country. They should have given it just back to Guatemala. But if, from my experience, just flying through Guatemala, just to connect a flight, it's a very different country. Belize would never sink back into Guatemala. It's two completely different countries. Belize is more akin to a Caribbean island than it is Latin America. So it's I would say, one standout country.
So let's just move on to Chewing the Cud just now.
Yeah.
We're doing the Chewing the Cud this week. There it is. We'll just bring up the title. Switch it to Queen Elizabeth from 1926 to 2022. And this is great, Garrett. Let's bring in her visiting Belize right now. Look at that. There she is.
Yep, there she is. That looks about right.
So that's her there as well. Obviously, that was back when Orange was in. The old Orange Tango. She's actually looks like she's broken her wrist there. I wasn't aware of that information. See that, Garrett?
Maybe.
So,
yeah.
Look. She's broken her wrist there.
Well,
some sort of cast.
It's sometimes though you'll see in those they'll tuck
Giving
their
Prince
hand
Andrew
in.
a quick slap over the head, basically.
No, sometimes it might be something to do like a royalty thing, because sometimes you'll see those guys tuck their hand in their shirt in the portraits and stuff. Though got weird.
She's got a cast on there. I think she's got a cast.
Oh wow! Yeah,
so there as well. But got the old swords and that as well. So that's amazing. So I've learned a lot about Belize just speaking to you today, and it's just and then think that was an old British colony. So there was the Queen itself. So let's have a look. Let's bring some other stuff up to the Queen as well. So this week, this was in the UK Radio Times. This was back before you had the internet. You used to get this magazine that was delivered to your house, and it would tell you what's on TV for a couple of weeks. It was called the Radio Times. And so they've got a website anyway. So they said 37.5 million people in the UK watched the Queen's funeral, which is essentially basically over 3/4 of the population.
Yep.
And 4 billion people worldwide. So apparently it was the most watched event in history, the Queen's funeral itself. So that's the impact that she's had on the world. Let's bring in some other pictures of her. There's a great picture of her. This is how I'll always remember the Queen, little smile. Yep. I think the good thing about the Queen is, and I'm not really a royalist, I'm always for Scottish independence. But because of what's happened, and she passed away, I always liked the Queen anyway, out of all the royals. But she's sort of independent. So seeing all these different prime ministers, she doesn't go one way or the other. Look at all the presidents that have come over. Trump loved her, Obama loved her, Biden loved her. They all sort of love the Queen. because the Queen's sort of impartial in terms of politics, and people like that, and they might think, oh, well, what about the colony and all that? But let's be realistic. It's been a while since the monarchy actually ruled the UK. You're going back probably 150, 200 years. So it was more of a figurehead role recently, rather than she's telling people from Buckingham Palace what to do. That's what it is.
Oh yeah,
So
I like to say, I was saying to some friends that King Charles, his job is like a 7-Eleven clerk compared to what Biden does. Like, I mean, that says something right there.
Yeah, well-paid 7-Eleven clerk, actually.
Yeah, well, a very well-paid 7-Eleven clerk.
And he owns a lot of land. But
he makes Joe Biden look like a rocket scientist.
I actually don't know about that, because you saw some of his recent comments and stuff. Maybe Joe Biden 15 years ago. So it's when he was sort of had all his marbles. But it just goes to show you. So the Queen comes in, she's impartial, people like her. There's a lot of people royalists. There's a lot of people sort of anti-monarchy, especially got all these sort of woke professors here bashing the Queen on Twitter and stuff like that. The thing about these woke professors, they're the absolute worst. They've got to understand that if you're a student right now, okay, and you want to do a revolution, the revolution is sitting right in front of you. You're going to this university costing you $50,000 a year minimum. That person's an educator in front of you. They've got a job for life, and they're making $250,000 a year. Who makes $250,000 a year if you're not actually creating anything that makes money? And they wonder why the education system in America is going down the toilet, and all these kids are coming in so much debt. But the same professors who've got a job for life in America can come online and just bash the Queen. I'm not happy about that anymore. I've worn my blue tie to match the Queen today as well. Look at that. So very even though I'm not a royalist, I like the Queen, and I watched the funeral and thought it was great. So here's a few images that I've brought from the funeral for everyone else to see. Look, there's new King Charles III, and that's them all bringing the Queen that's in there. This is our last sort of, march on there as well. That's the Lion Rampant from Scotland, that flag that you see at the front as well. So there was, she was obviously monarch of the, all the different countries in the British Isles, but also across the Commonwealth itself. Let's bring in the next one. This is them all walking behind the hearse when they were actually doing their sort of march from Buckingham Palace. And look, this is them all here. There's Prince Harry. He doesn't get to wear the special uniform because he's actually left the royal family, even though he's sneaking back in because he's not good at anything else. You know what I mean? He's famous because he's in the royal family. It's a bit like that Meghan Markle. Did anyone actually watch that Suits show anyway? You know what I mean? You might watch the first few episodes, but she was like the fifth character in it, and nobody cared about her now. And now suddenly she's the world beater, and she's famous for bashing the royal family, and the Americans like it. But in Britain, they don't particularly like it. Anyway, he left the royal family, doesn't get to wear the military uniform for this, but he still gets to wear his medals, And look, Prince Charles has got, I don't actually remember him going to war at all. Prince Harry did, he was in the military for a number of years, probably deserves his medals. But Prince Charles has got quite a large amount of medals here. I can't remember him going to war. There's Princess Anne. She, I like Princess Anne. She's probably my favorite one of the royals. She's got a few medals there. But I was actually noticing, future King Prince Will's a bit light on the medals there. He's only got 3 medals. What's going on? Like this guy at the back, he's got like loads of medals. You know what I mean? He's probably a real war hero. But, a bit light. Prince Wales needs to get the old medal table up there anyway if he wants to start to be the future king. But maybe once he becomes king, he gets a few extra medals anyway. Maybe take some of Prince Harry because you've left the royal family and now you work for Spotify, for your podcast, where he complains about the royal family because there's nothing else you do that's interesting. So anyway, that's a bit unfair, but that's about it. So there's the Queen. Let's bring her up one last time. There's Prince Lee. He's always got a funny look in his face, isn't he?
Oh yeah. It's
we're not going to like him the same.
That should be the mug that they put on the new currency. They should put that.
I don't think Belize. Look, let's go back to the Belize dollar. Well, there's the Queen. Looks great, There was her in her heyday, looking very, very royal. Oh, there she is there. Even with smile, older age, still looks great. Let's bring in Charlie again. Where was he? There. You know what I mean? Do the Belize government? Michael, can we bring Michael back in? Do you think the guy that's running the central banking system in Belize is going to want to stick
funny.
currency?
I actually asked them, and I was like, "Hey, are you guys planning to put King Charles on there?" And they're like, maybe in a new series we will."
Keep the Queen, guys.
Michael just sent me a photo of the Queen. He actually just sent me a photo. I'm waiting for him to say what it's of. I think it might be one of his family members meeting the Queen.
Oh, pop it up so we can see that there as well. So that's absolutely brilliant, you know. So anyway, Charlie, I just don't think it's going to be looking good in the notes. You know what I mean? So it's like all the coins, you know, we like the Queen. I think we should just keep the Queen. Let's just keep her. Everybody likes her, you know. It's just like keeps your money. You know, if we put Charles on the back of all the currency, what's going to happen then? Let's see.
Yeah. So this a picture here, and you know, it's interesting. I'm not sure who that is. I'd have to close out my other ones, but yeah.
It's Michael's family members meeting the Queen.
Yeah. Yep.
That's absolutely brilliant, you know.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me see here. That's his grandparents, Mr. and Miss Horace Young, meeting the Queen. So
that's it. My mother's met the Queen twice, you know. So she got an OBE, Order of the British Empire, and CBE, Commander of the British Empire. So if my mother's watching this, she got to meet the Queen twice as well for services to sport. So there you go. Anyway, you know, rest in peace, the Queen. We all loved you. You know, Americans loved you. She generated a lot of money to the UK. I know people complain about giving them money, but, you know, the bottom line is the royal family are bringing in about $3 billion a year to the economy, which isn't a bad one, you know, so it's worth keeping. You've got Gavin Newsom. He's basically using every single last drop of water for almond farming in California to send these Californian almonds out to China as a delicacy. So we've all got a drought here, but it brings in $4.5 billion. Maybe not might as much as the Queen, but essentially we all have a drought and have no access to water just so Gavin looks good, you know, to export almonds there. A lot of people will be thinking, is that true? Yeah, just Google it, you know. So and if I'm a farmer, I want to be basically almond farming because you make more money doing that than anything else. And they've got first dibs on all the water in the state. So if you know all these big forest fires, there's happening a lack of access to water. The almond trees are fed water all the time. So Gavin Newsom, you know, we want you to basically say to China, listen, you can get your almonds from somewhere else, like Spain. You know, they make Spanish almonds, but they're just not as good as the California almonds. And it's a delicacy in China. Over 90% of almonds now are exported from California, majority to China. So there we go. That's America once again. We're not only exporting our almonds, we're just using up our water so rich Chinese people can have almonds sitting on their dinner table when they watch President Xi doing his speeches, you know? So that's a little snippet of information that Gavin Newsom tries to keep out the news, you know? So anyway, that was absolutely great. So it was great for Michael to come in there, especially he was on a flight popping in. We should definitely get him back on the show.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely interested.
Oh, and then keep pushing the Belize angle. It's just especially the idea of the tokenized asset distributions where we could tokenize the land, provide distributions to the people. This is a way for the people to get their form of UBI from this. You know, that's what we worked on originally with Kokesh. We can maybe get Kokesh to come in to speak a bit more about that project as well. That would be interesting. But that's great then, Garrett. Glad you're back in the country and you've made it safely on your trips down into Central America.
Yep. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience, and I look forward to seeing the ways, you know, we can use this technology to help their nation grow. Okay, thanks again then, Garrett. Thank you, Michael. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today. You've been watching Boom It's on the Blockchain. My name's Alistair Caithness. Have a nice day.